Hi, and welcome to What's for Dinner. We're using all the ingredients you see on your screen right now. I'll be making a lemon herb roasted chicken with potatoes, vegetables, and pan gravy. So whenever I'm dealing with a whole chicken like this, the first thing I like to do is just unpack it, make sure you pull out the giblet package that they put on the inside, and then give it a quick rinse off. This just removes any of the packaging juices that can sometimes lead to a slightly funky flavor. And whenever you're dealing with like a chicken package like this, if you tie it up in a plastic bag, it'll buy you about an extra day or two before your trash starts to stink. So here we're going to go ahead and start prepping the aromatics that we're going to use for the chicken. I'm going to take a lemon, one whole lemon, and slice it thin, not super thin, it doesn't need to be paper thin, but you don't want it super thick either. We're going to go ahead and prep the herbs as well. So this is sage. I'm going to use rosemary, tarragon, and thyme as well. Sage and rosemary are very easy to prep. You just kind of pull the leaves off the stems. The stems are a lot stronger than the connections for the leaves, so they come off pretty easily. Tarragon is pretty easy to use as well. This tarragon was not very good. It was kind of starting to spoil a little bit. And here's fresh thyme. And rather than cut this, I wanted to speed this up so you can see fresh thyme is really underutilized because it's really kind of a pain in the ass to use, but it is really worth it. Just to go through and you got to strip all the little tiny leaves off these little tiny branches. And then I'm going to take about maybe 2 more sprigs of thyme, 1 more sprig of rosemary, and then a decent sized piece of sage. And we're going to save these and actually stuff these inside the chicken. So for the herbs that I stripped off these stalks, we're just going to give this a quick rough chop. It doesn't need to be super fine. I actually would prefer if it's not super fine. It makes the chicken look more appealing when it's done, when you can still see some of the whole herb leaves. So once we get our celery rinsed, I'm going to take about 2 ribs and cut them in half like this. And I'm creating what is ostensibly a flavor suppository. The celery kind of packages up these herbs so they kind of neatly insert inside of the chicken. I'm going to try to say that without being awkward. So with our herb suppository ready, or a bouquet garni as the French would call it, we'll go ahead and turn our attention to the chicken itself. First off, I'm going to apply a very even coating of butter to the outside. This is some room temperature butter. It's a little, it should be a little softer, but it's cold in my house. But no matter, you just keep you can see I'm working it in my hands a little bit and just rubbing the outside of the chicken. And then here I'm actually tucking some of the butter underneath the skin as well. This kind of really thorough buttering process is really, really important to how well the final product will turn out. So with a nice even layer of butter over everything, we'll go ahead and salt and pepper the chicken. And you may have noticed I dumped some of the salt and pepper off into a small bowl. This is because you don't want to contaminate your main supply of salt as you go back and forth. And again, make sure you rotate the chicken all around. You want to get salt and pepper everywhere, and even inside the cavity. Even though you're not going to be eating anything in here, it'll just help season the meat from the other side. So I'm a big fan of One Pan Meals. The cast iron skillet has been a cooking implement in many videos so far, so we're going to go ahead and roast the chicken in our cast iron skillet. Here you can see I've got all the aromatics. This is everything that's going inside the chicken. So the bouquet garni, the celery makes it just kind of slide in nice and easily along with the ends of the lemon. And then we'll go ahead and stuff those 2 onion halves in there as well. It may feel like it's not all gonna fit, but it's actually good. You wanna kind of like really fill the cavity as much as possible. That gives a lot of really good flavor. This really does, again, you're flavoring the chicken from the inside out as well as the outside in. So with everything stuffed in, we'll go ahead and turn our attention to the next step, which is going to be using these lemon slices. So you want to get the lemon slices under the skin, and you can see here it didn't quite go in. Just take your finger and kind of work it back and forth. The skin will separate from the meat and then they'll slide right in. This is important. You want to put the lemons, we're also going to put the herbs under the skin as well. You want to do this so they don't burn. The cooking process is quite long, and here you can see I'm putting lemons underneath because I didn't want to completely pack the underside of the skin with lemons because then it would just be too strong. And this will also help flavor the chicken from the other side up. So the reason we're putting the lemons and the herbs underneath the skin is so they don't burn. It's going to take a few hours to cook the whole chicken all the way through. And if they're sitting right on top, they're going to burn, they're going to fall off. They might just kind of rinse themselves off as you turn the chicken. So you want to make sure the herbs stay in contact with the meat and they don't get compromised in the cooking process. So here there's a little bit of butter left over. This is maybe a 1/4 of a stick, and I'm gonna just put a little bit more around. You want more butter on the top half of the chicken because this is where the breast meat is. It's where the majority of the thigh and leg meat is, and then put a little bit on the inside as well to kind of give, again, you're flavoring from all angles. And just one more sprinkle with salt and pepper, because some of the salt and pepper kind of came off as you're handling it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and finally add one more thing to this, which is gonna be another good grind of black pepper. This is just one of those dishes that really likes the flavor of black pepper, so adding more is gonna be very beneficial. So with our chicken sorted, we can go ahead and turn our attention to the vegetables that'll go in the pan. These are yellow Yukon potatoes. They're kind of a baby variety. Make sure you use red or yellow potatoes. Don't use Idaho. It has to be a waxy potato or they're just gonna turn to mush in the oven. So we're gonna toss these with a little bit of oil. This is grapeseed oil and salt and pepper for seasoning, and then place them around the pan with the chicken. And here again, you can see it's not just kind of, don't just dump them in. Approach it with a little bit of a plan. So you can see these potatoes are kind of hanging off the edge. I'm gonna go ahead and work them around and just kind of strategically place them. For things like celery and carrots, you want to make sure you cut it into decent sized pieces because you don't want it to fall apart. The long cooking process could easily kind of just dissolve these into nothingness. You want them to hold up through the entire cooking process. And as always, make sure you drop at least one piece of celery. And then finally with the carrots, at this point the pan is getting quite full. So instead of kind of pouring these in, I actually had to place them individually one by one. And the pan this seems it seems exceedingly full, and we're actually going to add onions on top of this. It all will fit. It's actually important to really fill pack the pan like this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So for anything like this where you're roasting onions along with a large piece of meat, it's preferable to not cut the onions too small because they will quickly just kind of dissolve into nothingness. By leaving them in these big quarter pieces, they actually have enough backbone that they can survive the many hours needed to roast the chicken entirely. So in the oven, 350 degrees, and we'll be back in just over 1 hour. So here at the 1 hour mark, we're gonna go ahead and pull the chicken out. So here what I'm doing is I'm lifting the chicken up, and then we're gonna work the vegetables into the middle. This is why it's important to fill the pan, because now that we've kind of started the cooking process, the vegetables will actually act as a bit of a bed for the chicken. I'm rotating it because, again, you want flavor on all sides. You don't necessarily eat the backside of the chicken, but you do get some of that skin, so there's no reason it should be flabby and gross while the top is nice and wonderful. And the top will also burn if you leave it face up the entire time. So by rotating the chicken once and letting it cook breast side down for about an hour, it keeps the skin on the bottom from burning, and it also somewhat bastes the skin on the breast and the wings and the legs, because now it's face down in this fatty broth that's building up inside the pan. This has been about 2 hours now. I'm gonna rotate the chicken back over, and this is to just finish browning the skin on the top. And here I'm checking the potatoes just to see how done they are, just to get an idea of how much longer everything has to cook. So with the chicken kind of placed, again, right on top, it'll now brown really, really nicely. This is about another 45 minutes later. And you can see it turned out really, really nicely. The color is just wonderful, and it's exactly what you want to see. And that flipping process becomes really crucial to making sure you get that really nice color. So now we're gonna move the chicken off to the side. We're gonna let it rest. And here you can just see how well the skin really does crunch up with this flipping method. So this is important because now we're gonna let the chicken rest, and then also double check your potatoes, because every once in a while you get one that just isn't all the way cooked and you may have to pop the vegetables back into the oven. But these thankfully were cooked all the way. So while the chicken rests, we're gonna go ahead and evacuate the pan. We now have this wonderful broth of chicken fat, chicken juice, and vegetable juice. So it's basically just chicken broth and vegetable broth mixed together, along with the flavor of the herbs and the lemon. Give it a taste, see what it needs. This needed absolutely nothing. I didn't have to do a single thing to it except just thicken it up. Because it was so ready to go, I decided a cornstarch slurry would be the best way to approach this. So here I just have one of these little Tupperware containers, a little bit of cornstarch, a little bit of water, slap on the lid and just shake it up really well. You could do this in a bowl with a whisk, but I find this method to be just much, much easier. So with the broth at a nice light simmer, go ahead and add in the slurry. Do it very slowly though. You can see even here, just a little dab and it already thickened up so much more. And just, I think that was maybe 3 or 4 drops and it's basically almost as thick as it needs to be. So work in small increments, add it little by little, keep whisking it through. Make sure you've completely whisked it through before you add more slurry or you'll turn your sauce into glue. Once you've got a nice viscosity that you like, let it simmer for about 20 seconds just to cook off any starch flavors that may be in there, and then go ahead and hit it with a little bit of black pepper. Again, this is a dish that does like black pepper. I said before that the broth didn't need anything, but a little black pepper never hurts. And finally, to finish it, we're gonna whisk in about a tablespoon of room temperature butter, and you can see this kind of like really nice sheen the sauce gets. That's from whisking in the butter. So next up, we're gonna go ahead and get this chicken carved. I'm gonna cut this into quarters. This is probably the best way to serve a chicken like this. First up is to kind of separate the thigh and leg meat from the rest of the carcass. So these little cuts right here just kind of free it up. You can then see the whole kind of thigh and leg quarter kind of folds away, and then you just want to cut right through the joint and the whole piece will come right off. Same with the wings. Go ahead and kind of start to flex them out just a little bit, and you can kind of see where the wing connects to the body, and then just cut right through that joint and the whole thing will pop right off. Go in at just a small angle right there, and then you can kind of see I missed the joint, but then you can just go in, correct slightly, and you're good to go. For the breasts, what you want to do is cut straight down the middle and then locate this cartilaginous piece that's right there in the center of the rib cage. Once you've found that piece, you then take your knife, go on the outside of it, cut down till you meet the ribs, and then with chicken this tender, you can just kind of pull it away and then run the knife right down the rib cage. And then you get this nice perfect breast piece. For doing the opposite side, again, find that cartilaginous piece, go on the other side, kind of cut straight down until you hit the ribs. And you can see I'm tweaking the knife a little bit and twisting it, and you'll kind of find where the separation line is. And you can see I'm using this green cutting board instead of my big wooden one. This is great for doing carving work like this because you can rotate the entire workspace around, getting the best angle rather than having to work with what you got. And do be careful, you can see how hot this chicken is. So with all your pieces freed, you can see there is a lot of meat left on this carcass. You could definitely go through and pick off probably another whole cup worth of meat if you so choose. But the one thing I'd like to highlight is this little guy right here. This is where the tail connects to the bird. It's often called the Pope's nose. It's just a wonderful piece of fat and meat, and it is my favorite part of the chicken. So once you've freed up all the pieces from the carcass, go ahead and get off these lemon slices. These will not taste very good if you don't remember to remove them. And with that, you've now got all your pieces, your veggies, and your sauce. Go ahead and build yourself a plate. Dress it with your wonderful pan sauce. As always, I thank you for watching. Please like, favorite, comment, and subscribe for more content like this every week.